following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Sports Chatter TV. I'm your host, Evan Bell, alongside my co-host here, Steve Atkinson. And we're a show that discusses the four major professional sports. But this summer, right now, we're in the dog days, sort of in between sports here, Steve.
Slowest week of sports.
Yep, I mean, only thing happening right now is some Major League Baseball, NFL, training camp's about to start, no NHL, no NBA as well. So, I mean, not much to talk about in the sports world here.
It's a drag.
But, you know, covering all sports a few nights ago is the 2013 ESPYs. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they had the winners such as best team, you know, best male athlete, so on and so forth. So I thought we'd maybe, you know, go over the winners of some of these awards and, you know, get your thoughts and whatnot. So for the best team, the winner is the Miami Heat. And among the nominees,
Why am I not surprised there?
Among the nominees, you had Alabama football, the Ravens, Chicago Blackhawks, Oklahoma softball, San Francisco Giants, and U.S. women gymnastics, with the Heat being the winner. What do you think about that?
There's a few curveballs in there for sure. I mean, gymnastics, I wouldn't have thought that one to be one of the nominees. But
see, I have to disagree. I thought gymnastics would win it, just because, you know, usually.
Well, they're great success, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And the girls.
Gabrielle Douglas.
Yeah, all young female athletes, plus, you know, representing the United States.
Of course.
Rather than representing a city or the state as the other, you know, nominees. I thought, you know, that would win. And I feel like the Heat were sort of be looked over just because they had all the superstar players.
At this point, the Heat is just it's so cliche. I mean, when you think basketball, you're thinking Heat. Obviously, it's one of the top teams you think of. And like you said, it's a team full of superstars, so you just automatically assume that, you know, it's going to be a favorite every year. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really surprised that they pulled it out there.
Yeah, see, again, like I said, I'm a little surprised just because I thought U.S. women gymnastics. But, you know, the Heat, they also won the award for best game. The game that their game versus Spurs in the NBA Finals, Game 6, beat out the Bruins versus Maple Leafs, Game 7, when the Bruins had that epic comeback. And the Ravens versus the Broncos in the AFC divisional playoffs, you know, when Flacco throws a 70-yard bomb to tie it. Again, I'm surprised the Heat won that one, just because the Bruins was monumental, you know, 3 goals to tie it. And then the Ravens Broncos game, you know, that was unexpected. And I feel like the Heat, I don't feel like that was a great game versus Spurs there. You know, the Ray Allen shot.
You can't take anything away from it, right? Ray Allen shot right at the end there. I mean, to clinch it and send it into OT. But for me, I got to go Bruins Maple Leafs. Mm-hmm. That whole series was just such a nail-biter. And, you know, the whole city of Boston and Toronto was so invested into this series that, you know, there was really a huge power struggle going on. You didn't know which way it was going to go, and it was really a nail-biter there.
I know. In the Heat again, LeBron James on the Heat wins Best Male Athlete among the nominees.
That one I'm not as surprised.
Yeah,
I would have figured a win there for him.
Among the nominees, you had Miguel Cabrera, you know, just dominating baseball the past 2 years. Adrian Peterson had the great comeback.
Dominating as well.
Michael Phelps was the last nominee. And
I feel like Phelps has kind of fallen into the back of everybody's minds since, you know, his historic gold medal run there. Everyone's kind of overlooking him now, even though there's no doubt he's one of the best Olympic athletes of all time.
See, I'm not surprised LeBron won, but I thought maybe Adrian Peterson had a chance just because he came back from, you know, that knee injury. And then he also almost broke the single-season rushing record, you know, 9 yards away.
Right.
He did win Best Comeback award, but I thought he would also win Best Male Athlete. But again, not surprised there. And then, you know.
Yeah, everyone just kind of seems to have a fascination with LeBron.
Yep. And then for the Best Championship Performance, you know, just to touch on another award here, you had LeBron James again, NBA Finals MVP.
Right.
So pretty much the Miami Heat and LeBron James dominated the ESPYs this year. And, I mean, the championship performance, sort of a weak category, I think. The only really competition was Joe Flacco, you know, Super Bowl MVP. Then you had Brad Keselowski, NASCAR Sprint Cup champion.
Right.
I mean, not really.
I mean, despite NASCAR's popularity, comparing it to the other 4 major sports, it's tremendously, popularity-wise, it's the bottom tier, and it's completely overlooked.
Mhm.
And it's even an argument whether or not it's a sport.
That's true. I mean, I think the Northeast up here, it's not as popular as down
Well, I mean, you
south
still
when
got
go-
the track in Loudon, though.
Yeah, that's true. But I was just surprised that was kind of thrown in the category. I thought maybe would have had an NHL, maybe
Right.
a soccer, something along those
Because, I mean,
lines.
Blackhawks-Bruins series was very dramatic as well, that third period turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
Something to think about.
And then, again, we'll just touch on this last one. Best coach manager. Rick Pitino, the winner there. Louisville men's basketball. Among the nominees, you had Bruce Arians, who took over for Chuck Pagano when he had the cancer in Indianapolis. Gino for the UConn women's basketball coach. John Danowski, Duke lacrosse.
Right.
And then Eric Spoelstra, Miami Heat. Not surprised Pitino won.
No, me
Louisville,
either.
obviously, champions this year in college basketball. Again, sort of not a weak category, but I'm surprised.
A little bit. There's some clear a couple front runners there out of the group.
I'm surprised Spoelstra didn't win just because the Heat were
It just
dominating
the way
the
it
category.
looks. It just looks like it's very biased towards the Heat and LeBron in general. I mean, cleaning up a few categories there, and you're right. I wouldn't have been surprised if Spoelstra came out with that win as well.
Yep, but moving on to a little NFL talk. Not much going on. Everyone's sort of
It's pretty slow.
preparing here for NFL training camp. Excuse me. Sort of big news if you follow, the NFL really close. The Lions released Javid Best, their injured running back. Been out, concussion prone. If you liken it to an athlete, maybe a Mark Savard gets a concussion, ends his career. I mean, Best isn't saying he's retiring or walking away. He got released, so it's the end of his Detroit Lions career. But in regards to the Lions, game plan and whatnot, he was sort of their, Darren Sproles, their change of pace back. He sort of added a dimension to their offense. But, the bigger issue or question that is raised is, concussions in the NFL. Obviously, he was out the whole 2012 season, didn't even play because of concussions. So is there anything you think the NFL can do, maybe tighten up? Obviously, they have the head-to-head contact. The concussion is now a big talking point in the NFL. They've raised awareness, but do you think they've raised enough or could do more?
I think they absolutely need to do more. I mean, just looking across the league at the number of guys that who are concussion-prone in general, who are starting to fall away. I mean, focusing on Javid Best, he was the Lions' first-round pick in 2010. He had 2 concussions in college. He was kind of iffy going into the draft, but they still picked him up, and then obviously 2 in the NFL. And it's almost been 2 years since he's played a game, just trying to recover, and he's still not even 100%. So this release doesn't really shock me too much. I don't know whether this will be the end of his career or not. I'd like to see more of him. He's got the skills, he's got the talent, so I hope he can bounce back. But as far as the NFL, they definitely need to raise some more awareness about this. I mean, guys are getting bigger, they're getting stronger. There's some research in place looking at new helmet technology, certain cushioning and stuff, and like you mentioned, eliminating head-to-head tackling. There's even been some discussion about whether or not to eliminate the three-point stance and even, punt returns and kick returns in general. So what do you think about that?
I mean, obviously one of the big things that I noticed that they done was they moved, on kickoffs after a touchdown or started the game, they moved up where the kickers would kick from. So now you really don't see that many returns because the kickers are just kicking it out of the end zone through the uprights. And then, another solution per se that people have raised is going back to leather helmets like the old days. Because, I mean, obviously not as many concussions in that day or not as many, there might have been, just not reported, obviously. But, during that day, people say players were more, aware of head contact, where they hit, so on and so forth. So maybe going back to less head protection per se, obviously just leather or, something along that lines. I don't think you'd go leather, but something along those lines maybe would make the players more aware of what they're doing with, the crown of their helmet per se, to lead to more, headshot awareness and not as many concussions in the future.
I think there certainly needs to be some lessons or something implemented to show the players the correct way to tackle, maybe some classes or something. Obviously, they've been playing football their whole lives, but this is the bigs now. You can't be running in headbutting a guy directly in the sternum or the head. I think at this day and age, we got to start looking at new helmet technology. I'd be too timid to say less head protection, because I mean, look at a guy like Vince Wilfork. You didn't have that guy back in the days, you know.
That's true.
300-pound mammoth, and he can truck you. You need to have more protection.
But the thing is, the thing I would be wary of is if you put more, protection per se, is that affecting the player's performance? Like, 'cause the helmet, you put on a football helmet already, it's sort of, it's heavy to wear on your head and run around and so forth. But if you're going to add more protection, you're adding more weight, and then, is it affecting the performance standpoint of the athletes?
That's where the research is coming into it. They haven't come up with a perfect design yet. I mean, adding more cushioning obviously is the simple solution, but I think it even comes to just the shape of the helmet itself.
Okay.
Either make it a little bit wider, thicker, as well as the cushioning. But
okay,
there's a lot of stuff up for debate there.
Yeah, I can see that. But moving on to another NFL player, New York Giants wide receiver Victor Cruz here, just signed. It was important for the Giants to lock him up. They said before training camp started, and they did. 6-year, a little over $45 million contract. And now Cruz just came out and said, it was important for me to sign the contract and stay with the Giants, but I feel like I kind of got gypped in a way by taking the hometown discount and staying with the Giants, where I feel, this is, Cruz saying this, I feel as though my numbers were elite and I deserved, an elite paycheck per se, along the lines of a Calvin Johnson or, a Julio Jones. And obviously he's not getting paid as much. So what do you feel about Cruz saying that, even though he signed the hometown discount?
Well, for me, I personally, being a Patriots fan, I got to say, he's absolutely an elite wide receiver. He is. I mean, people will argue, you got to get 100 receptions in order to be considered elite. But I think it's more about the quality and not as much the quantity. I mean, he leads the NFL in production on third down. He's a clutch player. He reminds me of Wes Welker, personally. He knows his routes. He executes with precision, getting separation from guys. And, he's a guy that Eli relies on as well. So it's pretty obvious that he's an elite player. He's their go-to guy. And I think the paycheck should reflect that.
Yeah, I sort of feel like he did get gypped in a way. But, it wasn't like he was forced to, sign with the Giants. He was a restricted free agent. Could have, tested the waters or whatnot and tried to sign for more, but he took the discount, so it's kind of, his decision in a way. Although I can see his point of view saying he deserves the elite, because I think he was one of the elite wide receivers in the league. The Giants really, I don't know how good they would be without, him on the outside there, stretching the field. But, it's definitely, good for the Giants in a way. They sort of more money to play around with and more money to, explore more options and whatnot. So good for him, good for the Giants, and we'll see, in the next couple of years if he tries to force his way out of town, per se, like other wide receivers had in the past, and, trying to get that bigger paycheck. Because, last week we talked about Stafford.
Right.
He signed his second big paycheck. We said by the time he's 29, he'll have made $94 million. And Cruz is...
Large contract.
Cruz is still getting a ton of money.
Yeah.
But in the NFL world, that's not that, a great amount for an elite wide receiver.
Compared to, obviously, different position, but Tony Romo getting a massive, massive contract deal, $100 million. It's staggering.
Yep. We'll move on here to talk about another NFL player who didn't get a big contract, but reports are coming out that he's in line for a big, contract extension here. Matt Ryan, quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. Reports coming out that he's going to be paid more than Joe Flacco, but less than Aaron Rodgers, which would make him the second highest paid quarterback in the league. Personally, I don't think Ryan deserves to be paid as the second highest paid quarterback in the league. I think he's top 6 quarterback in the league, but the money's started getting outlandish for quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are seeing what, Matt Ryan's probably saw what Joe Flacco got paid. He thinks
Flacco saw what Aaron Rodgers got paid.
And I think Ryan's better than Flacco, actually, although Flacco, won the Super Bowl. But I think Ryan saw what Flacco got paid and said, I want to get paid as much or more than him. I don't want to take less. So it's sort of quarterbacks are trying to one-up each other's contracts with more money.
It seems that way, and I hate to throw this out there, but I mean, look at a guy like Tom Brady, who took the pay cut so that the Patriots would have the money to throw elsewhere to make the team as a whole a lot better. And that's just a selfish act. But I'll stop talking about Tom. But as far as Matt Ryan, I think he does deserve the big contract. I would say he should get about what Tony Romo got, if not more. Maybe 107 million. I would put him at, because looking at his numbers, he's right on par with Tony Romo. He's 5 years younger than him. So the numbers themselves are pretty similar, and annually Matt Ryan has continued to get better. And, you know, his playoff record, he's 1-4. It's not that great, but he's still a young player, and he just needs the future to work with his team and improve overall.
I mean, I know it's tough for Ryan. You know, he'll definitely be expecting.
But, I mean, like I said last week, I put him as the most indispensable player on his team.
That's true. Again, we disagreed on that,
Yeah.
but that's, you know, a former argument. But speaking of the Falcons, a former Atlanta Falcon here, Michael Vick, now the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles obviously get rid of Andy Reid this offseason, keep Vick around, sort of a surprise.
Yeah.
They bring in Chip Kelly, the Oregon offensive mastermind, you know, to run the spread, his high-powered offense. And, you know, Chip Kelly says we're going to have a quarterback competition, you know, in training camp in this offseason. They obviously have Nick Foles, who started a couple games last season. They brought in Dennis Dixon, who played for Chip Kelly at Oregon, and a bunch of other, you know, mobile quarterbacks. And Vic says he's not disappointed about the QB competition. He thinks it's healthy, but he thinks he's going. I mean, all reports indicate that Vic's going to be the starting quarterback on day one for the Eagles here.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Michael Vick's going to be the quarterback come the first game of the season. I mean, with Folk and everything, I think it's a great competition aspect there. It's going to motivate him to work harder and to play better. But there's really no question in my mind that Vic's going to be the starter, just because, as you mentioned, with Chip's spread offense, it just works best with Michael Vick. And, you know, he's able to see the field perfectly with that offense.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even see Nick Foles fitting in. Out of all the quarterbacks on their depth chart right now, I think he's the least mobile, albeit he is mobile compared to other quarterbacks around the league, but compared to the ones on the Eagles roster, he's not as mobile. I think Vic, if you can get him to, you know, I wouldn't say he's a game manager a la like Mark Sanchez. I think he's a little bit, obviously, more explosive. He can make the down-the-field throws, but I don't think you want him chucking the ball, you know, 20, 30 times a game. I think you maybe want to, you know, run in the option.
Well, they'll certainly be looking at the run game as well.
So that's why, and they still got LaShawn McCoy as their running back,
Right.
one of the top running backs in the league. So, you know, I think Vic should and will be, you know, the starting quarterback there for the Eagles in this upcoming season. And, you know, just before we move on to the NBA here, let's touch on a little bit of college football.
Mm-hmm.
You know, big controversy surrounding Heisman winner last season, Johnny
Yes,
Football.
Johnny Manziel.
Yep, Johnny Manziel, quarterback for Texas A&M. He was at the Manning camp, you know, with Peyton and Eli and their dad. You know, they have the quarterback Manning camp in the summer. And he was sort of a counselor, you know, helping the kids and whatnot. And, you know, he is asked to leave, or he leaves the Manning camp, and then reports come out that, you know, he was drunk, you know, he went out partying the night before, hungover. And he went yesterday, SEC Media Day, and says, I wasn't, you know, those reports aren't true. I just my phone died, my alarm was on my phone, so I overslept and I just missed it. And, you know, the Manning camp has come out and said, you know, this is true. He did oversleep. Like, he didn't do anything wrong. We'd love to have him back, so on and so forth. But, I mean, it seems like every other week Manziel's, you know, in the headlines for something. I mean, he's obviously a great quarterback, but Texas A&M must be getting a little, you know, sick of the Johnny Manziel in the headlines here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's turning into the Johnny Football show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every other week you're hearing a tweet or something. He comes out saying, I can't wait to get out of here, blah, blah. He's tweeting pictures of himself gambling and doing this and that. But I think the important thing to realize here is that he's 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's a college sophomore. He's doing everything that college kids do. But with that said, you know, he's a Heisman winner, tremendous talent. And if he wants to have a career in the NFL, then he needs to start holding himself to that higher standard and really kind of wake up and become an adult, because for some reason the media is just fixated on him. And I think that this whole thing in general is just a result of the media, because they're biting any blood in the water, and they're trying to make a story out of anything. So I think they really need to back off, but Johnny himself needs to kind of wake up and grow up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. He sort of needs to grow up and mature here. But again, he should know that the attention is going to be on him. He is the Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
First freshman to win it. So, and definitely a lot of attention being paid on him. I think.
There's a lot of focus whether or not he's going to go pro early, too.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a story. I think with Johnny Manziel, anytime something comes out, it's definitely something to keep your eye on. But let's transition here to a little NBA. The big story this week, obviously not a lot going on in the NBA.
Right.
Free agency period sort of over. All the big moves have happened.
Slow
week for sports here. But a report came out that the Lakers are eyeing LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony for the 2014 season, trying to get him to come to the Lakers. Personally, I mean, I think it'd be fun. Maybe LeBron and Kobe on the same team, LeBron and Carmelo, maybe the trifecta, just to see Kobe was one of them or some sort of combination like that. I think would be interesting, but I can't see the Lakers pulling this off.
No, I mean, I think it's completely unrealistic to think about. Just look at LeBron James himself. I mean, personally, I think he's just going to stay in Miami. He's a guy his whole mentality is around a legacy. And, he doesn't want to have 3 different teams under his belt already. He wants to continue to win championships. So I really think there's no chance he's going to go back to Cleveland or something.
Reports have come out that Cleveland thinks they have a shot of LeBron coming back. He still has his house there.
The rumor's there.
He still has his house there. Cleveland's sort of, trying to, clear space for this upcoming free agency to get LeBron. That would be totally ridiculous if LeBron went back after what he did to them.
I think if you're a Cavs fan,
they would
just
accept
say,
him. Yeah,
absolutely not.
For sure.
But, I think somewhere in the back of LeBron's mind, he's thinking, I can go back to Cleveland with everything that I've learned and win them a championship that they haven't seen in 50 years.
I think, if he does go back to Cleveland, it will be to obviously try to win a championship, but, get the faith of the fans there
start his
back
legacy
that he just
there,
totally ripped apart when he left.
Right. I think the void, it can't be repaired at this point.
But that would be a great storyline for,
It would be pretty
the
funny.
future NBA season and so forth if LeBron goes back to Cleveland and then, all that
Who knows?
hoopla.
Maybe his career dies there. I don't know.
Oh,
But
I don't think his career dies. I think, it definitely would be a turn.
he's not going to have the same superstars playing around him, and I don't see it happening at all.
He brought Cleveland to the finals when he was literally the only NBA player on the team. Who was their I think their second best player was, Anderson Varejao maybe, maybe their 7-footer they had there for a while. But when he brought him to the finals, he was.
Oh, it was a huge deal.
Yeah, there was no one around him, and now he's on the Heat, so he kind of has. Dwayne Wade didn't do anything this finals, but if he went back to Cleveland, or if the reports are true that he might be going to the Lakers think they have a shot at him, that'd be interesting.
It's something to look at, but also looking at the other end of it, I think the most realistic guy that this could happen with is Carmelo Anthony. He's already got an established relationship with Kobe. They know each other very well on and off the court. But the only thing that kind of weighs into it is around 2015, the Knicks are going to have major cap space, so there's going to be a lot to work with there.
I know, but I think the Knicks fans are sort of sick of Carmelo just because he's great, obviously one of, if not the best pure scorer in the NBA, and he just clogs up their offense. He's chucking up 30 shots a game. You have, J.R. Smith on the other side chucking up 20. They just re-signed him.
Right. So,
it's sort of the two-man show or one-man show over there, depending who's on the court. So, if the Knicks can maybe, deal him, try to get something in return, if you let him walk, it's sort of a wash.
Yeah.
You traded away players for him, and then you're not getting anything back in return. But that's definitely a story to look, keep your eye on going in the future here. And then, speaking of the Heat, Rajon Rondo, Celtics point guard, says, I'll never play for the Miami Heat. After Ray Allen goes there and all that, people criticizing Ray Allen for going with the Heat. But Rondo says, I'll never play for the Heat, which I think was kind of funny.
It is a funny statement.
Just because,
to make.
The Heat, I still sort of think of them as an expansion team. They're not that little of a franchise. Yeah. But now everyone wants to go to the Heat because you're
true.
in South Beach.
Well, I mean, after LeBron made
Yeah.
such a spectacle of it,
I mean-
taking my town south. I mean, everyone wants to do the same
not
thing.
one, not that all that.
Ridiculous.
But I think it's funny. It shows sort of the old school throwback NBA when players didn't like each other. Players weren't buddies with other players on other teams. Didn't try to play with their friends. Were loyal to their franchises.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I
like
like to
it
see
too.
the fire in him. I really do. He's has never been shy about his dislike for the Heat.
Yeah.
Obviously speaking out about Ray Allen and talking about how they're constantly flopping and among other things. But I love hearing this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to see a player that's so invested in the city that he plays and actually showing some loyalty to them in this day and age where a star player moves everywhere. They don't really stay put for
Yeah,
long.
I mean, I think it would just be funny just because I know we talked last week. I think he's not even going to be on the Celtics for this upcoming season, and if somehow he gets shipped to the Heat, that'd be hysterical.
Irony.
I mean, I think there's 0% chance he goes there in one form.
I think
or
he'd
another.
rather go to Spain.
He'd probably play overseas somewhere. But enough with the NBA. Moving on to a little bit of Major League Baseball. Big news, I guess you could say. I mean, baseball, they just had the All-Star game and whatnot, but Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod, he expects he's going to return to the Yankees on this upcoming Monday. Obviously, the whole PED, all the steroid talk surrounding him, if he's even going to, be allowed in the league. He's coming back from the hip surgery and the injuries and whatnot. I mean, I think you could add to the Yankees' offense. They don't really have a third baseman. But I don't know if you want that media scrutiny and attention with A-Rod. He's sort of a strong personality.
You could say that.
To say that, to put it lightly. If I was the Yankees, I would only want him back. I think I would take him back, have him come back just for his offense alone. But the headache is sort of unbearable at this point.
I think at this point the Yankees just want to completely wipe their hands with A-Rod. I mean, they gave him such a huge contract. And, he's only 37, but towards the end of it, he's been such a dud. And he's been playing terrible, along with this, media scrutiny that he's been around the whole PED thing. And, last week, there's more developments coming out that he sat down with baseball officials. Mm-hmm. They put everything on the table, said this is what we know about you and what's been going on. And then he spoke with his lawyer and then had to tell the Yankees that night, I can't play for you today. So something's going on upstairs, and there's other things going on that we don't really know about. I mean, at this point, I think if you're A-Rod, you got to sit back with the pile of money that you have and just kind of end your career, because this could totally tarnish his whole image.
I mean,
and
yeah.
it would not only be his third strike as well.
I think his image is already pretty tarnished as it is, but it would definitely, put it in the dirt at that point.
I think his hope was that he wanted to be Barry Bonds. He wanted to keep going later in his age and hit 1 million home runs. Mm-hmm. But, it just didn't work out for him. So
we'll definitely see what happens Monday. And just to, touch on a little bit of NHL news here. News comes out today. Los Angeles Kings captain Dustin Brown signs a 8-year contract worth $47 million. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a really smart move by the Kings. I mean, you got to wrap them up. Comparing it to, say, Tuukka Rask, who also got an 8-year contract. I think it's a smart move. I mean, obviously, he's a real headstrong captain. He leads the team, and it's great to have him on your squad.
I know. I think he's one of the top 5 captains in the league. He's sort of a Patrice Bergeron-like to compare to someone. Jonathan
Taves,
maybe. Two-way player. I think he's a little more gritty than those two.
I think he's certainly more physical than Taves. Taves more of a goal scorer, obviously. Bergeron, well-rounded player. Like you said, I'd compare him to Bergeron mostly.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's definitely a big signing just to for the Kings to lock up one of their core pieces. I mean, they won it's not this season, but past season, they won the Cup. They're on the brink of reaching the Stanley Cup Finals again this year.
And they're still a young team.
Still a young team. They got the core pieces. So just for them to lock up Dustin Brown there is a big move for them. So, everyone, thanks again for tuning in to another episode here of Sports Chatter TV. Again, I'm your host, Evan Bell, alongside my co-host here, Steve Atkinson. And don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of Sports Chatter TV.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.